Hello and good afternoon, this is Ep02 back with a second episode on my Railcraft train station setup. Before I get too far into what I've built and how I've built, I wanted to first start out with some credits and some thank yous to those who made this possible. Obviously, everyone who makes Minecraft possible and makes Feed the Beast possible, this is entirely using the Feed the Beast mod packs, and without that I would have absolutely nothing to play with. On YouTube, there was a gentleman who has the username of Simwir, S-I-M-W-I-R Plays. If you search for Railcraft Station, he's currently one of the top ones that shows up. And I want to give him credit for not only for this ticket station, which I borrowed a lot of the code from, but just for the general concept overall of what he did, how he had things set up. I borrowed a lot of his general concepts. And then, of course, most importantly, to the people who actually developed, coded, and made all of FTB happen, Kofar Jaguar and all the other mod makers. I can't even begin to imagine how many people are involved. So with that in mind, I'm going to go on from this and assume, one, you've watched my previous video. If you haven't, please go watch that. And I'm also going to assume you have some basic knowledge of Railcraft, how signaling works, how this block signal can be paired with this block signal, and then this red dust is paired then with this receiver box, etc. If you do not understand that, I would highly recommend finding a YouTuber by the name of Forecaster. He seems to work with the mod developer for Railcraft and knows his stuff when it comes to how things work, and it does explain it fairly well. So I started with him and the Mr. Simwir Plays on how to build Railcraft, and just simply went from there. And I'm sure there were other videos as well. Before I go too far into what I built, how I built, etc., let me give you a real brief idea of dimensions in here. My assumption is if you're watching this, you probably want to build something similar. If you don't obviously build the exact same thing, but I'm using a Railcraft tape measure, and the length of this building is 56, and the width of this building is 44. So if you want to make this exact building, go nuts. I don't care. You're welcome to copy my idea all you want. I would highly recommend, however, if at all possible, expand everything out by like 16 blocks, at least lengthwise. I went a little overboard with a lot of the spacing. I wanted it to scale. So over here, I have 4 trains all ready to go. 4 different people could load up into 4 different trains all at the same time. And, you know, if there's multiple trains here that have double passenger carts, you could actually get even more than 4 people all loading up at the same time. So I kind of wanted that as an option. Also, the having the 3 cart trains and the 4 cart trains mixed up, they kind of get randomized a little bit. So it's nice to have some options. And if there's space for 4, then you have a better chance of having some options, whether you want a short one or a long one. While I'm kind of in the intro planning stage thought process here, you definitely want to plan out the length of your trains. If you're going to always have 3s, then stick with 3s. That will make things much easier. My setup is designed to handle both 3-length trains and 4-length trains, and that added a layer of complexity. I'll get into some of that. While I'm almost barely on the concept of dimensions here, let me just do this front rail. It has just a little bit of space to the front wall. Measure this out back here. Blackout curtains, love them. And all the way to the back of here, that's 52 to the backmost piece of track. And then from the side here to this piece of track is 38. So just as an FYI for you. As I was mentioning in my first video, all of these colored bricks, you could just as easily use wool. This is just kind of a marker designation for me to know what is where and who's connected to what. So this yellow here that's just all floating all by itself is actually telling you that this signal relay block down here is part of this yellow block. So there's a yellow here, and I think there's actually yellow down there if you look real careful, and there's some yellow there, and there's some yellow there, and then there's some yellow there. So this whole section here, from this piece of track through here, all the way through here, a couple in there and a couple in there, is all kind of monitored as one. You technically can't do Railcraft block signaling that complex, but I've kind of merged them together, and I'll get into how all this stuff works. Again, I don't want to go too much into the Railcraft details, but one thing that you definitely should grab onto is that this block signal here on orange and this block signal here on orange, these two are watching that section of track. They are paired together, and they will behave as one to a point. The back one will show a different color at times if a train is moving. But the way it's working here is, because these are red, well, because there's a train here, these have a red signal. Because these have a red signal, it's passing that red signal to this receiver box. And because this receiver box is red, it is not emitting redstone. It will only emit redstone if the signal block is showing green. So this guy, we have to wait for this guy to be green. Now, if I'm going to take my wireless redstone trickery, I'm just going to pulse this real quick. This will take a second, but at some point here, this light is going to go yellow because the train is moving, and then it's going to go green. Because it's green, this guy sent a redstone signal, and it's all kind of quick. This is the challenge in troubleshooting, is this happens, and half a second later, this other thing starts moving. So you got to be really quick and watching what's happening. But because this is red now, there is the next train that comes around is not allowed to proceed. That's really what it comes down to. So because there's a train here, don't let the next one in. You can refuel all you want, and then you need to stop. And you're going to stay right there, and you're going to wait until this train is out of the way before you're allowed to proceed forward. This concept can be extended in many different ways, but that is the basic concept that is prevalent all throughout any well-designed Railcraft setup, is monitor the section ahead, stop the train behind. That's generally how a lot of it works. So, because there is a train here in this blue section, this blue signal block is showing a red light, and this guy is showing a red light. Now, from there, you can see the dust, the little redstone dust stuff, and I could actually pair it with this guy. It doesn't really matter. That is all coming down to this receiver box. And this is kind of, you can almost compare it to wireless redstone, except it's got, 5 different possibilities rather than just on and off. But because he's getting a red signal from up there, he is passing that red signal. This guy is getting the red signal, and he's passing it to that switch motor. This controller box is also getting the red signal and passing it over to here, and we're doing all kinds of other fanciness here. And this is a whole interlock setup for the intersection, and interlock is one of the most advanced Railcraft things. It takes a little while to get your head wrapped around it. But the long and the short of it is, for the basics at least, there's a train here in the blue section. So because this blue section is full, you'll note that, actually that just changed. That was closed. It's now open. So right now in this default setting, it's going to allow a train to go forward. At some point, we're going to have a train come around the corner here. Hi, Mr. Train. He's going to request, an interlock is going to let him through, and he's going to go straight. And as soon as he goes straight, now blue has a train. So this is going to redirect. See how this rail is now against the left side here, and in comparison, this one is open here. So this one is allowing for straight travel, this one is not. This is forcing a right turn. And the next train, if we were to get another train to come through here, it would go down this right path and use this side path over here. So by default, this is the primary refuel, hence refuel 1. This is a secondary refuel, etc., etc. So as things back up, you'll find more and more trains just hanging around waiting for a path to be clear ahead of it. So for the fun of it, notice how yellow is, this yellow brick section is currently has a green, good, healthy aspect. I'm going to go ahead and block it. I stuck one single minecart on the track. That is now showing red. And the next train to come around will not be allowed in. The reason that is because this intersection is not safe. We don't know why, we don't know what, we don't know if it's moving, we don't care. We just know there is something on the track, it is in the way, don't send the next train in. So I'm going to pulse this. I have my little wireless redstone transceiver here, or transmitter here. I'm going to pulse a couple times because I want to intentionally cause a backlog, just for the fun of it. So I have one train coming in, and it wants to go. And normally, it would go through. And if you look real carefully, you can actually see the second train. There's a second train approaching. Now, similar concept to what we'll have going on in the back, this train is here, and this light is monitoring it. So this guy is red because there's a train here. Because there's a train here, and because these two light blue, this block signal section here is red, he's passing that signal on, and that is affecting this spot. And so this train is waiting because that slot's not available. And likewise, this is actually a funky L shape, I'll show you. But this section here also has a train. So because this section has a train, this guy's not allowed to proceed forward. And so on and so on and so on, and then we'll eventually clog all this up, and hopefully they all space out and they're all behaving themselves. Now, you'll notice I have repeaters hanging around, and most times with Railcraft you don't need to worry about repeaters. Remember me saying that the spacing in here is a little tight, and if you can go a little bigger, please do. That's kind of why. Let me show you. I'm not going to go into a lot of Railcraft details, at least not the basics, but there's two different types of boarding tracks that I'm using very heavily, and you'll see these all over the place. I have a basic boarding track, and I have a train boarding track. Well, what's the difference? If you pulse a redstone signal, they both light up, but then one immediately goes off. The train boarding track, I believe, hangs on for about 5 or 6 seconds. If you have a large area with a lot of space, and you can have each one of your queue sections all distance apart from each other, then the 5 or 6 seconds is fine. I don't have that space. But this is too short. Like if I pulse this and there's a train on there, it gets about a cart, maybe a cart and a half worth, and then it just stops. Because this is actually, when it's not lit up, it's going to hold onto a train and grab it. So what I've done in a lot of my situations here is, oh, we're good, we can send the next one, go. This repeater has 32 ticks on it. And if you look at the timing on here, I'll pulse it again, it's actually got a delay on it, and it runs for 32 ticks, which is like a second and a half, and then it shuts back off again. And what I've found is that for the length of 3 and 4 trains, this is a really good timing frame, because if I have 2 trains stuck on top of each other over here, which I haven't in a while, but it has happened before, then when the first train goes through, it lights up the next section and says, oh, we're bad here, we have a train in here. That will immediately cause this one back here to lock up. That is fine because of the way the spacing is here. But on this side, I did not do that because I've had issues in the past with this side getting all clumped up. So with all of that in mind, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to take my crowbar and smack you. Just attack it once. Now because that track is clear, we are just totally opening this logjam. So blue is bad, so we're going to redirect. Send the next train over to the right side. Now the train on blue finished refueling and went forward into orange. So now we can allow another train in there. And and blue is still bad, so we're going to send the next train over on the red side. And because we had open space in the outbound platforms, these are cycling through kind of quick. If we had 5 more trains in here, we would definitely have more of a backlog, and we'd consistently have trains sitting over here, and that's fine. I think overall I can probably do like 10 to 12 trains in here. No, probably a total of 10 in here with no passengers at all, and we wouldn't really have any problems. Now, as we saw at the very beginning of the first episode, if you get to this section here, you're coming from outside, and you hit these player detectors, detector player from Railcraft, that will engage this switch and will send you over this way, and then this will disembark you, pop you off the train, and you end up landing like right here. And then, because there was a player on it, it's on this inner inbound platform, and it runs along here, and for the most part it will just keep on running straight until it gets to here, and that's when the interlock starts coming into play. So as I was going into with a lot of this, I have, for some reason I have 16 ticks on these repeaters over here, but the long and the short of it is the receiver box gets a redstone signal from wherever, from the area ahead, whether it be interlock or whether it just be a basic block signal, and that allows the train to go through for a certain period of time, and it hopefully grabs the next train, so we don't end up with 2 on top of each other. When I was first developing this and putting everything together, there were a lot of times I had 2 trains, one immediately following the other, and that can confuse a lot of switching, because the front one decides where everybody goes, even if the other one has a destination, or it has other rules, or if it has a player, etc. So, because these are green, this is now just saying, go ahead, you're free, go ahead, and etc., etc. I don't know if I went overkill on some of this, but I probably did. There's a switch over here. What this means is, right now, we have it set to default of straight. Now, if we had a lot of trains all come in all at once with players on them, and this interlock was just all kinds of clogged up back here, and we had a lot of trains in the back already, what would happen is, notice that it's straight? If I pop a cart down, this switch motor engages and switches off to the side. What this allows is for many, it's kind of giving priority to the trains that have players on them, so a player isn't sitting out on the inbound track waiting for all this to clear up. So what this means is we can pretty much, even if the back intersection was clogged, we could have 6 trains on this side before things would lock down. This intersection back here has an interlock controlling these 2, and I'll show you my underneath area. But it's paying attention to this blue section, blue here, blue for there. That stone brick should actually be blue. And then I actually made an L shape on this. I don't know whether this is overkill or not. This is kind of what I was getting to before. But this signal here is actually tied with this guy and this guy. So it's a big L shape. And this intersection only lets things through if there's no cart here, and there's no train here, and there's no train here. Because the interlock doesn't know whether the train has a player or not. We might send it straight if there is no player. We might turn it to the left if there is a player. So we need both of these paths to be open. So by default, they'll kind of bunch up here on this left side, and as needed, they'll shoot off to the right if allowed. So that kind of leads us into our next section here. I'm going to go ahead and break my way in. And another thing I probably should state when I'm going into assumptions is that everyone knows the general concept of AND gates, OR gates, and NOT gates. We are definitely using redstone very heavily. Oh, you know what? I know what's going on here. Interlock just said, okay, you're safe to go. And everybody else is clogging up. So how about I break you, and you go off, and then you may proceed. All right, back to this. So there's a couple things going on here in order to make this trickery work. I have, by default, it's going forward. And then, if there is a train here, switch this. But we don't want to send a train from here if there's no place to put them over here, because they go around this little zig and then they're going this way, and we don't want two trains in this section either. So what I've done is, if you are happy, then you're sending a redstone signal to here. You are also sending a redstone signal underneath, and this is Forge Microblocks covers. Let me in. All right, you know what? I'm going bad. So Forge Microblocks here allow me to run redstone directly underneath and use the exact same block as the block that's supporting the train track. Yes, this little thin thing can support a train. Don't ask. So the signal's coming in here, and it hits the AND gate. Well, what's going on here with these two? These two receiver boxes, are paying attention to other signal blocks. Yes, it's pain in the butt, but that's the way they're named. This is another one of these L shapes. So this block signal here goes over to here, and then it goes back to here. So this whole L shape is doing a couple things, and one of them is communicating to here and saying, you are another link of the AND gate. So far we're monitoring, is there a train here? No? Okay, we're safe. Is there a train here? Here, and here, and here. No, we're safe. Also, oh, gravity. We're monitoring one other thing. So this AND gate says, I need all three of you happy before I will send the next train. Well, what's this monitoring? It's a little hard to see, and I'm not used to bat mode, but it's actually sending it from this. There's a signal block relay in there. So the only time, I'll be careful of my wording here as I'm listening to my wording. The only time this redstone alloy wire, this red alloy wire here is lit up, the only time it's lit up is when all three of these separate sections are good. So the section ahead is good, and this section parallel to the side is good, and, oh boy, and the L section behind it is good. So it's paying attention. This guy only goes when all three of these areas are clear. So we are allowing trains on the outer loop to kind of move through faster. But if there's no space, then unload this passenger side section. Hope that makes sense. Now, the way this is working with this purple section here is we're monitoring, and I'm not going to touch interlocks. I don't think I'm going to touch it this episode at all. But this guy is sending a signal over to the interlock saying, we are green for now, don't worry about me, you don't need to send a train. But the back side here is linked with this thing. Let me clear this out. And hopefully not break anything. So what's going on here is this block signal is sending back to here. And I kind of had to invert this. So normally you'd say emit redstone when you're green. Well, basically what I've done is completely invert that and say when you're not green, so if you're yellow or you're red or you're blinking, then emit a redstone signal. That switches this when we're not green. So we're not green if there's a train here. And if there is a train there, then we want the next train to go that way. So this switch motor will engage this switch track and route the next train over there. Now, the other thing it does two things at once here, as you can see. There's another piece of red ally wire, and we have a NOT gate. So we are currently not sending any redstone. So because we are not sending redstone, that means it is safe for the next one to go. So my being inverted confuses things a bit, but that's kind of the easiest way I got it in order to do two different things at once. So rather than have an interlock block for each and every one of these sections, I just said, by default, if it's safe ahead, proceed ahead. If it is safe on the other side, you can proceed ahead and just let the switch track decide what direction you're actually going. So I hope all of that makes sense. Please feel free to leave comments if it's not making sense. The rest of these sections are kind of the same thing repeated over. So back here, we have the same thing. We have another receiver box monitoring the section ahead and on the outside. No, I'm sorry. This box is monitoring the side immediately parallel. The box on the far side with this big redstone snake is monitoring the section ahead, and this guy is monitoring the section behind. Again, same as before. And then it's probably overkill, but each section has a disembarking track. We should only need the one disembarking track, but that's fine. So again, same thing, AND gate, redstone signal, all that good stuff. Alright. I think that kind of covers this side. All these switch motors, like I said before with the LEDs, these are all identical. With the exception of these receiver boxes. These receiver boxes are all, on this side here, are all the inverted ones that are only emitting redstone if we are bad or bad or bad or bad or bad. We are not emitting redstone signal when we are good. And all these other receiver boxes are pretty much normal. They're just emits redstone if we're green. So if we are green, you may proceed forward, like you. And as he gets up to the next section, this turns off until he clears the next section, and then it turns back on again. All right, I think that about covers it for this whole inbound section. I think on my next episode, I'm going to try to cover the interlocks. I'm not going to go into crazy detail. Forecaster does cover a lot of it. I think going over it again is useful, but I'm not necessarily going to go into full and complete detail on how everything works. But until next time, please take care. Enjoy yourself.